How can a home become a bridge between humans and nature, even in the most violent winter storms? This is a question that the modern world often tries to answer with concrete, steel, and barriers that separate us from the elements. But long before the sprawl of cities, on the vast, wind-swept expanse of the Great Plains, a different answer was found. Here, under the endless sky, the temperature plummets to 30 degrees below zero. The air turns brittle, and the wind cuts across the open land with a ferocity that can freeze the spirit. Yet in this unforgiving landscape, life did not just survive, it flourished. The indigenous peoples of the plains, the Lakota, the Cheyenne, the Arapaho, did not look at the winter as an enemy to be conquered, but as a season to be understood. Their shelter, the tipi, was far more than a simple tent or a primitive dwelling. It was a masterpiece of engineering, a sanctuary of warmth, and a profound symbol of resilience. It stood as a testament to a civilization that understood the subtle language of the earth. As we journey into the heart of this structure, we uncover a wisdom that transcends architecture. We find a vessel designed to hold not just heat, but the very soul of a people. To understand the tipi, one must first understand that it was born of the earth itself. It was not manufactured, it was gathered. The architects of these homes were the women of the tribes. They were the keepers of the design, owning the lodge and orchestrating its creation with a deep spiritual reverence. The construction began with the cedar tree. 3 or 4 poles, stripped and cured, were lashed together to form a tripod. In the philosophy of the plains, the number 3 represents balance, a stability that no modern square frame can rival. When these poles were raised, they did not just hold up a roof, they stood as the bones of the home, rooted in the ground and reaching for the sky. 12 to 15 additional poles would complete the frame, leaning in to support one another, much like the community itself. Over this skeleton was draped the skin of the buffalo. 10, perhaps 20 hides were stitched together, brain-tanned to a velvet softness and smoked to repel the rain. This was not merely a covering, it was the gift of the animal brother, wrapping the human family in protection. The conical shape of the lodge was an imitation of the mountains and the pine trees. It allowed the fierce prairie winds to flow around it, fluid and harmless, rather than fighting against the gust. In this design, there is a lesson. True strength comes not from resistance, but from harmony with the flow of nature. If the poles were the bones and the hides were the skin, then the fire was the beating heart of the tipi. Placed exactly in the center, the fire pit was more than a source of heat. It was the axis of their universe. It connected the cold earth below to the open sky above through the smoke hole at the apex of the lodge. This opening was not a flaw in the design, but a gateway. As the smoke rose, it carried the prayers of the people upward to the Great Spirit, a visible breath of life connecting the mortal to the divine. The genius of the tipi lay in how it breathed. It was a structure that inhaled and exhaled. In the deep winter, the women installed an inner lining, a canvas or hide that hung from the poles inside the lodge, reaching about 7 feet high. This simple addition created a miracle of physics. Cold, fresh air entered from the bottom, traveling between the outer shell and the inner liner, warming as it rose and exiting through the top. This created a chimney effect, drawing the smoke out even on the calmest days. Dead air, trapped between the liner and the heavy outer cover, acted as invisible insulation, raising the interior temperature by 20 degrees or more. It was a dynamic system, constantly moving, constantly balancing. The occupants adjusted the smoke flaps outside, maneuvering long poles to catch the wind or shield the opening, turning the lodge itself into a living organism that adapted to the shifting mood of the sky. While the blizzard howled outside, burying the landscape in white silence, the interior of the tipi was a place of vibrant life. The space was small, yet it contained a universe of connection. 8 to 10 people lived within this circle, sharing the warmth of a single small fire. The design of the lodge forced a physical and emotional closeness that is rare in our modern world of separate rooms and closed doors. Here, there were no corners for shadows to hide in. The circle brought everyone face to face, elders, parents, and children. The floor was insulated with sweet grass and heavy buffalo robes, the fur facing inward to trap body heat. At night, before the family slept, stones were heated in the embers until they glowed. Wrapped in hide, these stones were buried beneath the sleeping robes, releasing a gentle, radiant heat that lasted until morning. It was a comfort born of ingenuity and care. In this warm glow, the harshness of the winter melted away. This was the time for the oral tradition, where the history of the tribe was passed down through stories. The grandmother spoke, and the children listened, their imaginations painting pictures on the canvas walls. They ate pemmican, a nutrient-dense mixture of dried meat and berries, fuel for the body prepared months in advance. The teepee in winter was not a place of suffering. It was a cocoon of safety, where culture was preserved and the bonds of kinship were forged stronger than iron. One of the most profound aspects of the teepee was its impermanence. It was designed to move. When the seasons turned or the buffalo herds shifted their grazing grounds, the camp would mobilize. The women could strike the lodge in a matter of minutes, collapsing the poles and folding the heavy skins. This portability was an expression of a philosophy that viewed land not as property to be owned, but as a sacred space to be traversed. They walked lightly upon the earth, leaving behind only the ring of stones where the fire once burned, a footprint that the grass would soon reclaim. Even the fire itself traveled with them. Live coals were sealed inside buffalo horns, plugged with clay, preserving the spark of life for days as they journeyed across the snow. This ability to move, to adapt, and to carry one's home and hearth across the plains spoke of a freedom that is difficult for the settled mind to grasp. It was a humility that recognized that humans do not command the land. We simply move within its rhythms. Today, as we look back at the sophistication of the teepee, we see something far greater than a shelter made of skin and wood. We see a mirror reflecting a lost balance. The people of the plains did not survive the winter by fighting it with brute force. They thrived by observing the laws of thermodynamics, the patterns of the wind, and the behavior of the animals, and then aligning their lives with those truths. The teepee teaches us that a home is not defined by its square footage or its permanence, but by the warmth it holds and the community it fosters. It reminds us that technology does not always mean complexity. Sometimes, the most advanced solutions are the ones most deeply rooted in the earth. As the winter winds blow across the modern world, perhaps we can still feel the warmth of that ancient fire, inviting us to remember that we are not separate from nature, but a vital part of its great, eternal circle.